Do you think that there's some element of survivorship bias? Like when you read about the quarterbacks who made it and you think about the things that they did and you say, well, Tom Brady made it because he was a hard worker and because he believed in himself.
Yeah.
But for every Tom Brady, I mean, I don't have the statistic in front of me, obviously, but I'm assuming that there's probably thousands of, John Smiths who also worked hard and believed in themselves, but didn't make it. Like, just general thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, so once I was sitting with Tom Brady and we were in his living room, and I tried to address that kind of question with him, which is you're essentially asking for like the randomness that takes place. Like, clearly there are certain people who are blessed with the ability to throw the ball in ways that others aren't. So like, that's the entry point. And then, what happens from there? And so I did ask him about that element, the element of luck and randomness. And it was really interesting because he was kind of offended and then also kind of not. But like, if you're Tom Brady, that's something you just, especially if you were in the heat of his career, like he was at that point. I mean, he doesn't acknowledge luck or randomness. He acknowledges the fact that he was doing certain drills or watching film or doing these things at times when others weren't. And, it's a very simple story that he can tell himself of input and output. But what you're addressing, I think, is really interesting. I mean, I think that when you look at the element that randomness and luck plays in these things, I think that there's two things that really stick out for me. Number one, injuries. Like some people just are cursed with bodies that don't really hold up. And, because of that, they're never really able to realize their potential as a quarterback and as a professional athlete. And I think that like the second one is, and this especially comes into play in the NFL, is where you're drafted. And I think that like we like to romanticize quarterbacks and think that they're good enough to transcend all of the chaos that you know that comes to their doorstep. And I think that there's some truth to that for the very, very great ones. Like I think that John Elway could. I think that Patrick Mahomes could. But where you're picked matters. And when you go to these teams like the Jets, like the Bengals to an extent, like the Bears to an extent, you know, like the Cardinals to an extent. You go to these teams that are kind of like systemically not winning. And, if that quarterback is unable to turn that team around and overcome all of that dysfunction and chaos, what you see nowadays, and I think this is really interesting, is that they end up having good careers elsewhere. And maybe they don't become, a first ballot Hall of Famer, but they're able to pick their team, pick their coach, have a little bit of agency over those dynamics, and you see them do well. You think Geno Smith, drafted by the Jets, couldn't overcome it, having a good career, not a good year, but generally he's had a good post-Jets career. Sam Darnold, exactly the same thing. Daniel Jones, to a certain extent, you look at like the way that he's playing, and even though he played for a while in New York, he didn't look like this player. And, it even goes back to like guys like Jim Plunkett, who were drafted by the Patriots, unable to kind of transcend that mess, goes to the Raiders and wins 2 Super Bowls. And so I think that element is really, really fascinating. And it's why you saw John and Jack Elway and Archie and Eli Manning try to, politely blow up the draft so that they could have some agency over their employer. And it's why, as I write about in the book, Carl and Caleb Williams thought about doing the same thing with the Bears.